Hi there, everybody. This is Alex, and this is a little bit of two things. One is we're going to talk about the ATEM switcher a little bit, but really, you're kind of a guinea pig. I'm testing my virtual training system, and because it was pre-patent application stuff, I haven't been able to show it to anyone. So I think this is actually the first time that I'm actually showing it to anyone. So anyway, so hopefully you'll like it. It hopefully will make things a little bit easier for me to kind of talk through stuff. And fortunately, this is I think going to be perfect. Um, if you have any questions, this will. If you don't have any questions, this is going to be a really short show because I'm really have queued it up to answer questions, not so much like give a lecture. So if you have questions, ask them. If not, we'll do this at another time when you're more available. Anyway, start putting in questions if you have them or comments. I'm gonna start here where it all begins. So if you look right now, well, let me close this. Let me close some of this stuff up here. If you look at my screen now, what you're going to see is you'll see this number right here. So this is the IP number. So how the software works and how the switcher works is all based on just looking at an IP. And what's really great about that, and it works like this with a lot of switchers, but it happens to be just very fluid with the ATEM, is once you get whatever that number is, you have full control over it. It can be over the internet. If you use a VPN, you can actually do it anywhere in the world, which is really, really cool. So it's a great way to just kind of it's a very low level way of just getting a hold of things. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to figure out what my number is here. I think it's and it won't matter that you see it because it is an internal number. I guess if you hacked in, it would matter that you can see my switcher. Yep. Let's see here. So I think this is a 10.100.10.50. Yeah, that's fine. So I threw it in there. Now it says no device. Hold on. This is what happens when we start experimenting with something. Is I am not able to connect to that. Hold on. And Kevin, can you confirm the address there? Oh, hold on. So it was 50.10. There we go. All right. So that's just a slide. Don't worry about that. So here's your switcher. So this is your hardware switcher, and that is that's kind of where we where we start. And there's a couple things. This is what we call a 1ME switcher and a 1ME switcher panel. So why that's important is if you look at, let me pull this mic over just a little bit. If you look at these, these keys, basically are that one mix effect. Okay, so so that that's your kind of basic setup here. And what you have here is, of course, program. That's what's going to the program and preview. Now, what I don't have showing here, which I probably will do next time, is letting you see the ME. So that's something that I forgot. I will get better at remembering these things. Again, we're testing this system, and so anyway, so this is the program that you're going to have here. Now, of course, you can name all of these. Now, where do you name these? So let me show you here. So if we go back into the software. And let me. And you'll notice, by the way, that this is all pretty much the same as far as the software goes, except that your program is up here, your preview is down here. So that's that's kind of the same setup, but laid out slightly differently. So you can see how it relates to that. We'll go back to this. Now, what we can do is we'll go in here, and you'll see labels. So the labels, there's a couple of them. There's the name, of course, that you'll see here, and then there are the labels. And these labels are what are basically what's showing up right here. So this is where those labels show up. And so what you can do is, basically, you're changing these. These names are actually what shows up in the, and again, I'm going to do this again with a multi-view input. We have to remember that. We'll take notes that multi-view has to be on this thing. So you can change all those names there. And of course, the multi-view setup is, you can also do it up here, by the way. So if you look at this area here, you have, and I need to work on the zoom here, but you can see you've got a bunch of different options here. You can do all the work that you can do in the software in these areas, but it's one of those things that I find it easier to do in the software. That people who are used to the hardware will figure it out, and they'll do it all with the hardware. And it's good to know how to do that, so that when you're sitting there in front of it, in the middle of a show, you don't have to go grab the software. But it's good to know how to do it in the software because it's a lot faster. So let's go back and if we look in the multi-view, what's happening here is we're able to decide, what we want. So this is your preview. This is your program. Now, what happens here is all up to you. Like what inputs show up in your multi-view and what you're viewing. It doesn't change the keying, but what it does do is it changes the what you're able to preview as you work there. And there's a lot of different layouts for this. So while this layout always stays the same, if we go back to this layout here, we can make a lot of adjustments. So we can show, you can look at the bottom, and everybody, a lot of TDs based on the history will want different things. This is audio meters on. This turns the audio meters on so that you can see them, so that you know whether you're getting a signal from that group. The HyperDecks, what this does is this assigns IPs that each HyperDeck is going to look for playback. So playback and record. So what happens is that basically you're able to attach HyperDecks to the process. So if we think about it here, you've got your switcher, here, and you've got your HyperDeck somewhere in the building, right? And basically over IP, you're able to connect each one of those, and that means that when the switcher, when you hit play, or when you actually cut to this HyperDeck, you can have it queued up so that it's going to just start playing immediately, and that's super powerful as far as figuring that out. So all you have to do is basically you're assigning the input. This is the input of what you want that HyperDeck to represent, as well as the IP to the HyperDeck. The auto roll is kind of setting up how much it's going to pre-roll before it plays out. But you can do up to 4 of those. And again, you can hit record on those as well as for playback, but you can also, we use it for basically a couple things. One is obviously playing back full screen, and also playing back lower thirds and any kind of sweepers, because, well, not all kinds of sweepers, but lower thirds specifically, because the smaller HyperDecks, the micro HyperDecks or the mini HyperDecks, will actually do key fill. Now, what key fill means is that basically, if we go back to here, normally you just have one signal going into the switcher, right? And that goes onto your screen. But if you need an alpha channel, you need a second signal, and this is called the key, and this is the fill. The fill is all the color information that's in that is in your lower third. The key is your alpha. So they come in as separate and basically get combined in the switcher, and the switcher will use those two to and there's a whole tutorial on how to build those. We're not going to do that today. But those key fills, now you have to have something that can output both the key fill as well as keeping it synced up. It's got to be a synced key fill that comes out, otherwise you're not going to get if everything's just a little off, it's going to be problematic. So so that's what that is here. The remote is so that you can have remote control. We're not going to talk about that today. Let's see. Let's go through the preferences. There's not that many preferences. So one of the things about the older switchers, and by older I mean all the switchers that we have right now, except for one, is that you do need to set a frame rate or a frame for the entire show. So all the cameras coming to you have to be the same frame rate and resolution. You don't have to do that with the new advanced panel. Not the panel, but the new advanced switcher, the 4K Pro or Television Studio Pro, is now putting Teranexes in each one of those. And so that allows you to not have to deal with that. Right now we're set to 5994 for some esoteric reasons related to our splitter that we're using. But normally it would be some version of P, especially for webcasting. Your media pool these are two clips that you can actually load into the switcher. So you can decide how long each one is. You can have two shorter ones or one long one. And this can be small playouts. Typically we use them for sweepers and stuff like that. Camera control is for basically what you're going to have camera control in the return back to your cameras, like the camera that we have here. The question is are you going to be doing this for camera control monitoring so people know that you're monitoring or sending that back? We usually turn that to none. If you turn it to one of the auxes that are going back, you end up basically every time you switch to the camera that you want to do it at, you end up with you end up with it switching. Now, what it's good for is if you're not using the return camera, if you're not using the return monitor for the camera operators, if they're getting their own aux, so basically you're sending a whole nother video signal to them. A lot of times we send the video signal back to them, and that's why it works this way. But if you're sending that down, what you can do here is you can set, let's say, aux 3. You can send your signal to aux 3 and have it be switching between them, and then essentially send that signal to the cameras. Now, that means that you don't have a usable return back to the camera operator, so you'd have to use an aux 1, 2, 4, 5, 6 to send them their returns. So you need two SDIs back. But what this means is that every time you select, if you've got a monitor in front of you, every time you select the camera that you want to shade, it switches it automatically, which is it's really nice because otherwise you can't, you just don't have control over what you're looking at while you're shading. And that's the reason you need it. Again, if you have any questions, ask them. Hold on, I'm going to refresh. No. Not a lot of questions. I know that George is there, but George already knows all this stuff, so he's just watching and seeing how this goes. Let's go back and look at this here. So you've got a couple things here. This is obviously color generators. You've got a super source. I'm going to not talk about the super source today because it's a lot to talk about. You've got upstream keyers. So now there's a difference between upstream and downstream keyers. So you have if you think about your video signal, think of it as in layers. So you have both of them are above the video layer. So you have but the big thing is that there's basically what we would call, when this goes out, there's clean and there's what we would generally call a dirty or the program. So what happens is that an upstream key is essentially will basically be in the dirty feed no matter what. It will not, in the clean feed no matter what. So basically the upstream key will go into both of these. A downstream key will only go into the dirty. So the DSK only goes into the dirty key or in the dirty program. Clean program is basically without the downstream key. And why that's important is because there are things that you may want to go. A clean feed is basically what we use as a backup. Well, there's two reasons we use it. One is if we're recording and we don't want all the graphics. Two is if we make a mistake with the lower thirds, it'd be great to have one that didn't have the lower thirds that we could use to fix it. Another one is if you're sending it out to networks or to other services that may not want all the graphics that you're doing, they're going to add other ones. So you can do your whole show, but then you can provide that clean plate back to networks or other partners. So those are, and another one might be sending it out to a screen. So sending it to an LED wall that's outside or something you may not want, the broadcast graphics or the broadcast bugs. So anyway, so that's the difference between the upstream key and the downstream key. Let's go back to the screen here. So we've got a couple things here, and I'm just going to do overviews because no one's asking any questions. Hold on. I'm just checking. So far, there's not a lot of questions. I'm not sure if anyone sees it. We're trying to figure this out. Anyway, so so the upstream key basically has a couple things that you can do there. One is the Luma. That's a Luma key, a chroma key, patterns, and your DVE. So that's and the DVE is available, so you can kind of move a picture over picture and so on and so forth. So anyway, those are the upstream. That is how the upstream key works. And again, we can, each one of these is probably worth a talk. This just lets you control your different transitions and how you're going to get between them. Downstream key is basically what we talked about, and in a future one we'll talk all about the downstream key. We'll probably do a whole class on the downstream key because there's a lot to do, and then fade to black is just controlling it. Anyway, that is kind of your overview. I'm going to keep it short because no one's asking any questions. I just, a lot of it was us. There's a whole lot of work that we're doing right now to produce better classes and figure this stuff out, and we're trying to use these to kind of force our system and figure out what was missing. So we did it. And if there was a ton of you asking questions, I would stay longer. But it seems that there's no one asking any questions, and so you either know it all, or something else. And so anyway, you'll have to put some comments as to whether these work or not. I'm gonna probably go ahead and kill the stream as I don't see a lot of people watching. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed it. I'm gonna go back and look at this, and we're gonna make a bunch of notes and go from there. Anyway, thanks so much. We'll do another stream soon. And Kevin, you can go anytime you like.